It's a pleasure, it's an honor to be here on behalf of Warwick Basses and Amps and Chord Canada. I've traveled a long way to come here. I live in Colorado. I live in Winter Park, Colorado. High in the mountains, in the Rocky Mountains, on the western slope of the Continental Divide. And in the last few years I've come to work with Warwick and play Warwick basses. And in the process of coming to the company, I became fascinated with the production, the way that the instruments are crafted and the methods that they use, the unique things that they do in the development of the instruments and in the production of the instruments. And I took a big interest in that. So I kind of evolved my relationship with the company to where I'm now a product specialist for the company. So I travel all over the world, in fact, and I come to places like this and I talk to people about Warwick. And I share what I know about the what I know about the company, what I've come to learn and love about all things Warwick. There's a lot of information that I can tell you about the brand, and there's a lot of information that I can share with you just from my personal experience, having played for 32 years. I've played a lot of different instruments over the years, and there's a lot of great instruments out there. You know, let's face it, there's many different options for any player that wants to play a bass guitar, or a guitar for that matter. You know, you have a lot of choices. And there's going to be something that appeals to everybody. You know, everybody has different tastes. And some people like a shiny guitar with a sparkly finish. Some people like one that looks like wood grain. So, some people like one with 4 strings, 5 strings, 6 strings, or 12 strings. Some people like it with frets or fretless. You know, there's so much variety there, and the players have their own individual taste depending on their style of music that they play, or what they like aesthetically, what appeals to them. Do they like the color blue? Do they like the color black? Do they like this kind of, are they partial to classic looking, vintage looking instruments? Are they partial to something unique and exotic, you know? So the players all have, they have their own idea of what they like, and Warwick is just one of those many choices that they have. You know, I'm not here to tell you that Warwick is the best and everything else is crap, because that's just not true. There's a lot of good stuff out there. But what I am here to tell you is that there's some elements of quality that Warwick puts into their instruments that others simply don't, and I'm just going to tell you about some of them. And along the way, I'm going to tell you some general information about electric guitars and electric basses in general. So when it comes time to choose an instrument, or it comes time to, if you're in the sales department, if you're in sales, maybe I'll give you some ideas that might help you to steer the player to the right kind of instrument that will fit them well. All right? So I'll start by saying that when it comes to a musical instrument, a stringed musical instrument, an electric guitar or bass, it all comes down to the single most important thing is the wood. You know, what is the origin of the wood, and what is the quality of the wood that's being used? Because that's the heart of the instrument, is in the wood. That's where the tone is generated, is the combination of the wood and the hardware and the strings. The strings, the hardware, and the wood come together, and they create vibration, and that's what makes the instrument give its sound. And then the pickups magnify that sound. and they you can also manipulate the sound with the pickups, and the pickups contribute to the character and the personality of the instrument. But the primary starting point of all instrument is in the wood. And at Warwick, that's the number one priority, and one of the things that gets the most attention right off the bat is the starting point, which is the wood. So I'll tell you a little bit about the wood, where it comes from, and what happens to it at Warwick. All the wood that is going to be considered to be used for any Warwick instrument, or Framus guitar for that matter, because they're Framus guitars and Warwick are sister companies, and the instruments are made in the same factory. Okay, all the wood is purchased in logs from various different places from all over the world. And the logs are transported to Markneukirchen, Germany, where our production facility is, still as logs, and then milled in-house by Warwick locally and cut into smaller pieces. This way, the wood, we know how, this is all part of the process of knowing our drying process, okay? Because the most important thing about building an instrument that's going to be stable and have longevity is how dry the wood is at the point of when the instrument is built, and if it's been dried correctly. The philosophy that Warwick has goes back to the ancient times of violin making, where you'd naturally air dry your wood for an extended period of time. Okay, so Warwick takes that philosophy from the old school violin makers and cello makers and old world instrument making, and they dry all the wood for a minimum of 3 to 5 years, and in some cases 6, 10, 18, 20 years. So the wood is brought there in logs, it's cut up, and then it's stacked in big warehouses. It's staggered when it's stacked so that air can circulate all around it on pallets, 10 meters high, as far as you can see, just wood, and it's put in these warehouses, and it's dried there. Naturally air dried in the outdoors, with the natural air on it, circulating around it for a long time, a minimum of 3 years, usually 5 years, and in some cases 7, 8, 10, 12, 20 years. Okay, so that's the first step to having quality control on the instruments and having longevity and stability. And the next is the fact that the woods are long-term naturally air dry. What happens is there's two different kinds of processes when it comes to drying. You can do long-term natural air drying, in which case the cells inside the wood have air pockets. Inside the wood, it's organic material. There are cells that are pockets of air. And when you long-term dry the wood, these cells slowly dry and slowly close. And the wood comes together and becomes very stable. There's another way that you can do the process is by kiln drying. Kiln drying is when you bake the wood. You put it into an oven and try to cook the moisture out of it. And this is a very common method in instrument production to rapidly kiln dry the wood and then start building from it. But there's a problem that occurs in that, and that is that the cells remain empty air pockets, and within the first couple months, the first few months of production, or within the first year of production, they collapse suddenly, and that's where you get warping and you have problems with necks. So Warwick's philosophy has always been long-term air drying is the best way to get a handle on and control the consistency and the stability of the wood. And then there's another level of keeping the humidity and the moisture content within the wood completely consistent throughout the whole production process. And what happens is every single piece of wood that comes into the, once it's been outside for an extended period of time, it's brought into the production. And at that point, it goes across, it travels through a sensor, okay? And this sensing equipment measures the amount of moisture that's in every single piece of wood that comes in that's going to be considered to be used for an instrument. The optimum amount of moisture is 6%. You can't have it too dry and you can't have it too wet. 6% moisture in the wood is what you need. If it's too dry, then it has potential to be brittle and split, and you'll have problems along those lines. And then if it's too wet, you can have problems on the other side. So the perfect amount of moisture is 6%. So the wood comes in, it passes over the sensor. The sensor takes a reading of how much moisture is in it, and if it's at 6%, it passes through. It's considered now to be potential to be used. If it's too wet, if it's say it's 7, 8, 9, 10% humidity in the wood, then that is automatically separated to another pile, and that goes out for more drying. That needs to be dried more because it's too wet still. If it comes in and it's too dry, if it comes in and it's at 5%, 4%, or 3%, then it's brought into the production. In the production, the whole entire factory has humidity control, and it has these misters that add moisture to the air, so that the factory is always at 6%. Anytime that you take a piece of wood and put it into an environment, it will take on the humidity content of where it is. So if the wood comes in too dry, we stack it up inside the factory, and in a month or a month and a half, it comes up to that. We bring it back up to the 6%. Okay? So that way we know every single piece of wood that's ever going to be considered to build an instrument out of is at that 6%. Okay? This is one of the steps. This is one of the steps that Warwick takes to ensure the longevity and the stability of the necks. And again, this goes back to the old world violin making, long-term air drying, and it starts in the process of marrying old world instrument techniques with the most modern state-of-the-art technology. And that's kind of if there's anything to remember about Warwick, it's that is what the company is built on. It's built on old world building design, building philosophies and concepts and practices, marrying that with the most state-of-the-art modern equipment that's available. Okay? So the next thing that happens in the process is the criteria of beauty, the beauty criteria. The wood is selected to have beauty characteristics in the grain patterns. You know, if there's any impurities or worming or any stuff within the wood that doesn't meet a very stringent criteria, then that's taken out. Okay, so only the best of the best is brought in to be considered to be used for the instrument. This way, it's all about consistency, so that every single bass is at a high level of quality. You know, you don't have one that looks great and one that doesn't look so great, one that looks great and one that doesn't look so great. So there's a strict criteria when it comes to the wood selection. Okay, so talking about the wood a little bit more, we have one of the, if not the largest in the world, selection of wood choices with 56 different species and subspecies of woods with which to choose to have an instrument built from in our custom shop. And this is, in every single one of these species and every single one of these varieties of species is available and dried and ready now. Okay, so it's not like it'll be ready in 3 years or 5 years. It's not in the process of being dried. There's much that is in the process of being dried, but as of right now, if you were to order a custom shop bass, like for example, this is one of my, these are both custom shop basses, custom built for me. This one has a 4A quilted maple top. You know, we have lots of 4A quilted maple top, and in fact, a lot of it comes from Canada in the quilted maple. And then if you look at the back of it, it's a through body neck construction, and it has a 4-piece flame maple, AAA flame maple neck. So these occurrences in nature, the flaming, the quilting, the bird's eye, the angel step, these types of varieties, burls, various different pomelays, these natural occurrences that happen in nature create really beautiful grain patterns. And that's another thing that Warwick is known for, is that each instrument is kind of a unique piece of art. And a lot of that comes by way of nature. You know, nature provides the beauty, you know, within the grain patterns, with the very unique. Everyone is unique in its own way, especially when you get into some of the burls and the quilting and the various different pomelays, because it's so highly figured. You have highly figured wood, and then you have wood that just takes on a characteristic, an aesthetic characteristic due to like diseases and stuff that happen in trees. You know, worming and diseases and different. When a tree is in the process of dying, you know, if it has a disease and the disease is slowly killing the tree, it's working its way like fingers through the tree, and it leaves these cool track marks and stuff like that in there, and traces of it going through the wood. And then when you cut that and make it into a top, it looks gorgeous and beautiful. So sometimes nature's mistakes are actually fantastic.
Isn't bird's eye a disease? I think it's one.
What's that?
Bird's eye maple. I think it's a disease that a tree has.
I don't know. I thought, well, I don't think so. Bird's eye? I don't know. No, I don't think so. I thought it was where I think
We'll have to Google that.
something coming out. Yeah. I never studied bird's eye, how it gets like that, so I can't give you a good answer on that. My guess would be no, though. We'll find out.
We'll find out.
I'd like to know too. So the different woods that we have in the custom shop offer a wide variety of selection for the player. And the massive amount of variety of instruments and body styles, there's something for everybody with a Warwick instrument. So going back to what happens when we're building an instrument, anybody is building an instrument, what are the most important components of it to make it work well? And I mentioned the wood being the first most important thing, and the next most important thing is the hardware. Because the hardware connects the strings, and the strings connect to the hardware, and the hardware connects to the wood, and that's what's getting the vibration going. Warwick takes a big pride and a big level of commitment to the quality of the hardware that we use. So much so that we use the same quality hardware on all three lines. Even the imports have the high quality hardware on it. We don't use a separate quality hardware on the imports as we do on the high-end German instruments. So you get a consistent level of quality in the hardware. So even if you order a rock bass that's manufactured in China, it still has the same quality tuners and the same quality bridge as a custom shop Warwick bass, you know. And same thing goes for the Pro Series. All Warwick instruments have the Just-Enough 3 adjustable nut system, which is a really important and excellent part of the hardware. This enables you to raise and lower the string height at the nut. So you can, depending on your style and depending on your taste as a player, you can fine-tune the string height from the nut in addition to at the bridge. Whereas traditionally you would have a bone nut or a graphite nut or a lot of plastic or whatever, and you would have to cut it, and then if you wanted to make an adjustment to it, you'd have to cut a new one, and it would require a tech to work on your instrument, and it would cost money anytime that you needed to have that done. Well, every single Warwick instrument, including the imports, has an adjustable nut system. Now the German ones have a solid brass, and the imports have a composite material adjustable nut. But I assure you, the composite material works quite well. It's very it doesn't kill the tone or anything. But brass is the highest quality.
Yeah.
It's the highest quality nut. So the higher the Warwick series instruments have the brass nut, and the Pro series and the rock bass have the composite nut. But it still serves the same purpose and achieves the same thing. It enables you to raise and lower the strings of the nut. Of course, the tuners on all instruments are identical, whether they're black, chrome, or gold, or the various different finishes that you can get on the tuners. They're all identical, and they just a smooth gear in there that works well. It's a sealed tuner, and it works real well. Now, as we move to the bridge, this is one of the unique things about Warwick instruments. We have what we call the two-piece, three-dimensional bridge system. It has the bridge saddle assembly and then the tailpiece. In the bridge saddle assembly, here comes the part where it gets its name, the three-dimensional two-piece bridge system. It has 4 different pivot points on each corner, which enables it to float and be adjusted, forward and back and up and down this way. Okay. Of course, you have the saddle adjustments for front and back for setting the intonation, and you have the saddle adjustments for raising and lowering the strings for your action. But you also have the ability to adjust the saddles from side to side. So this is a really important one, which a lot of players will find very useful, is that you can adjust the spacing from string to string. So if you like a little wider spacing for slapping or whatever technique you like, or if the wide spacing is too much and you like it real tight and you just like to play with your fingers and like it real tight, then you can bring the spacing in. And having that level of adjustability and kind of customizing the playability of the instrument to the player is a really nice benefit to this bridge system, and that's something that Warwick is kind of unique with. I'm not going to say that nobody else does it, but it's very rare. For me, coming to Warwick solved a lot of issues that I had. I've been playing for 32 years, and I've had the opportunity to play many different brands of instruments, many different brands of basses, and nice ones, really, really nice ones. And there's a lot of nice ones out there. I know there is. But here's the thing: before I came to Warwick, I always had nice basses that would do this right, this right, this right, this right. But there was one thing that they wouldn't come through on. Do you understand what I'm saying? They would be good for slapping, they would be good for this, they would be good for this type of tone. But there was one thing that they didn't do right, and it kind of drove me nuts, But when I came to Warwick, I was able to find instruments that did everything right for me. I was able to choose in my custom shop bass, like this one for example. I was able to choose the neck shape that I wanted, the spacing that I wanted, the pickups, the electronics that I wanted. I was able to choose the woods that I wanted in order to create a wood synergy to have the type of tone that I wanted. When we combine different woods together, we get a synergy, a tonal synergy. Meaning when we combine like a Bubinga body with a Wenji fingerboard and an Ovenkal neck, when those 3 types of woods combine, they create a synergy, a tonal synergy. Same thing with this bass, for example, with an alder back and a maple. Half the body, half the thickness is maple and alder on the back, and then a maple neck and a maple fingerboard. It has a bright sound, and the alder hypes the low mids and brings the mids up. So another wood synergy would be like this one with an ash body and a Wenji neck and an Ovenkal, or a Wenji fingerboard and an Ovenkal neck. Or this is another one with ash, Ovenkal, and Wenji. And we have a lot of different things that occur when you combine the different woods together. Okay. So the pickups now come into play, and with the pickups and the electronics, Warwick offers a lot of tonal options and flexibility as well, okay? The majority of the instruments, first of all, have the ability to be active or passive, okay? Active electronics or passive electronics. And having the option for both is really nice for the player. Some players prefer a passive. The simplicity of passive electronics, it tends to sound more natural. It tends to sound just like the transparent sound of the instrument. You know, the pickups, the instrument, the neck, the wood. In passive mode, that's the most natural and true sounding thing. Now, with active electronics, it's an onboard equalizer. It gives you the ability to boost and cut frequencies. So that offers that flexibility, you know, to add more treble or add more bass or add more mid-range to the tone of the instrument from the instrument itself. And that's a nice feature to have. I tend to use it in active mode, and I use a passive mode a lot of the time. And if I am in active mode, I don't use a lot of the EQ, meaning I don't have them all turned all the way to 10 in the EQ. I tend to have just maybe a slight boost. And the main thing that I do is I switch between the front pickup and the back pickup. You know, they have a blend control here. And this is what changes from the back pickup, both pickups, just the front pickup. So if I'm ever changing any knobs on the bass, it's usually the blend control. Otherwise, I leave the EQ pretty flat. Occasionally, I'll boost the bass a little bit. You know, occasionally I'll boost them all a little bit. But I never just go like that, because what happens is your sound becomes. You know, the most natural sound comes from the mid-range. The sound that you hear, that we hear the most, is in the mid-range frequencies. The super low stuff and the super high stuff is kind of irrelevant. So
also, sorry, Andy.
Yeah.
Also about the battery. The battery goes dead. Would you address that?
Yeah, you just put it in passive mode, and
Right.
the bass can continue to play. And that's kind of an important thing. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Because some basses that have just a purely active circuit, if the battery dies, your bass stops working. And if you happen to be on an island somewhere where they don't have batteries, or you're in the middle of a gig, or you would be SOL, as they say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The tone has, in my opinion, it's about character. You know, the richness of the tone and the kind of the bell, the chiming of the tone, the clarity, the richness. These are all attributes that Warwick instruments have, and it's a combination. It's a combination of the wood, the hardware, and the electronics that make them sound the way they sound. They're very clear, very even amount of frequencies represented, with a little bit of a low mid, accentuated low mid. You know, Warwick basses have a classic growl, particularly the thumb bass. Let's play the thumb bass for a second, because that one is an important part of the Warwick history because it's very unique. It's the most unique of all the Warwick basses in terms of how it sounds, and it really demonstrates the idea of wood synergy, combining a bubinga body with an open call neck and a Winji fingerboard. This is the thumb bolt on. If I wanted to get into some Motown, like a P bass with flat wound strings, that sounds nothing like what I was just doing a minute ago. That's that warm, old school Motown sound. You can certainly get that from this instrument. Now, if you want to go for like a kind of a Jaco Pastorius, suppose we should turn on the chorus because that's the job. So you can get a wide variety of tones out of this instrument. One important thing I want to tell you about the Warwick basses is there's not one that's good for metal and one that's good for jazz and one that's good for rock and one that's good for polka, you know. Everyone is good for everything, you know. There's such a wide variety and flexibility within the electronics with the active, passive option and the blending and the placement of the pickups. You know, with the thumb bass, of course, a big part of the tone is the placement of the pickups. You have a pickup in the back, and then a pickup even further in the back, and it's angled. So that first sound that I was doing, which is, you know, the slap bass sound, boy, it really gets that sound because of the pickup placement. And with the treble control, you can really, you can really get glassy if you want to. I don't go there, you know. I don't go there. But I know a lot of people that do. My buddy TM, he loves the glass. So the instrument has a lot of, this particular one has a lot of character and a lot of unique tonal personality to it. But they all do, and they all have a wide variety of sounds as a result of the wood synergy and the flexibility of the electronics. When it comes to manufacturing instruments, Hans-Peter Wilfer, the owner of Warwick, has devoted himself completely to the process of finding the highest quality and the most consistency in the instruments, you know. However, using whatever means he could, he's invested and developed and created in-house unique advances to raise the quality of the instruments, to go with the times and keep the technology being the most efficient and the most optimal. You know, we have two CNC machines, computerized cutting machines. It's a lathe that cuts the bodies and cuts the neck shapes. And this CNC routing machine, we have two of them, and they cut on a five axis. So that enables the complex body shapes to be contours to be cut and have ultimate consistency, so that all the bodies are shaped the same and that they can get them very, very close to the shape that they are. Then every instrument is given an equal amount of handwork. So 50% of the work is done by machines, by state-of-the-art machines, and 50% of the work is still done by hand, by a craftsman or woman sanding and doing the final shaping of the instrument. So it's not all done with machines, but it's not all done by hand either. You know, it's that balance of technology with old world instrument building concepts. So we have a number of body styles and pickup configurations. I think there's 12 or maybe 16 different body styles that the people can choose from. The Corvette, the Streamer, the Thumb, the Starbase, the Reverso, the Alien, the Buzzard, the Fortress. This is the Stuart Signature Series. We have the Jack Bruce Survivor.
Vampire.
We have the Vampire. You know,
Dolphin.
what's that?
Dolphin. Dolphin.
The Dolphin.
Dolphin. Sorry for my English.
That is a lot. So there's something for everybody. I think that's important to think about from a sales standpoint is that maybe 8 of the 10 people that would come into this store or any store in the world, 8 of 10 people that came in that wanted a bass would want a Fender bass or a P bass or a jazz bass. We can't change that. That's history. That's rock and roll, man. That's the history of the world, is the P bass and the jazz bass. And we're not here to say nobody should play a P bass and a jazz bass. They should only play Warwick. It's a completely absurd even concept to even consider. But what we can say is, well, if you're going to spend that much money on that, you know, let me at least talk to you about some of the quality things and some of the things that happen on a Warwick instrument that are different than happen on a standard P bass or whatever. You know what I mean? Or a standard, you know, anything. You know, bring it in at that point. You have the opportunity to have a conversation. You know, when it comes to sales, people come in they might think that they want a P bass, but that's just because someone told them that's what they want. You know, maybe they come in and wanting a P bass, but they leave with a Warwick because you say this has an adjustable nut system on it. It has a 3-dimensional bridge system. It has active passive electronics. It's quiet. It has high quality wood. The fret ends are real smooth. You know, it has the quick access truss rod cover and the quick access back panel. You know, you can have a conversation. You can choose to initiate a conversation with them that hips them to something else to consider. You know, and that's what it's all about. You know, we don't have an unrealistic expectation that people are suddenly going to stop playing the P bass and the jazz bass and everyone's going to come play the Warwick. But if we are behind Warwick and we're all part of this, we're all working together as a team. You know, we all have the same thing in mind. I mean, you have a wide variety of beautiful instruments and brands that are, you know, nice quality brands, and we're honored that Warwick is one of them. You know, when people come in, you know, we can just kind of initiate that conversation, you know, and help them get the instrument that's going to be best for them. Ultimately, that's what the job we're here to do, is to find an instrument that suits a customer well at the point that they're at in their musical journey, and as they grow, giving them an instrument to grow to and grow into. And you know, with the young players, with the teenage players, you know, they would come in and see this custom shop bass. Well, they don't have $10,000 to buy a custom shop bass right now. They just simply don't. But they might have enough to buy a rock bass, you know. And if, you know, I don't know about you, but with me, if I buy a car that's made by Chevrolet or whatever, and I have good success with that car and it lasts me 10 years, when it comes time for me to buy another car, I'm probably going to buy another one from the same brand, you know. It's not likely that I'm going to just switch because I already know that I like that and it's proven done well for me. So sometimes with players, you can think of it as a long-term relationship, you know, in sales. And you, with the independent stores such as this one, which is I prefer so much more than the conglomerate type of chains and stuff like that. You have a very cool and very unique dynamic because you have the service after the sale aspect of your customer, and you think of your customer in the long term. You know, so if they're a bass customer, you think about their needs, and when something new comes in, and you start to get an idea of what their taste is and what are the things they like and what are the things they don't really like, and you just keep mental notes and say, hey, well, we just got this new Warwick Alien in, you know. Maybe the guy is a jazz bass guy, and he will never ever play anything ever in his life other than that jazz bass, except he might play an alien, because it's cool and completely different, you know what I mean? So there's ways to cross-pollinate, you know, there's ways to get players that are playing one brand to consider owning a bass from another brand, you know, if it does something different and it does something unique with the instrument that they don't already have, you know, it's just a matter of having a relationship with your customers and finding what's best for them, you know, and helping them to find it, and bringing the Warwick stuff into the conversation is there's several things that you can use as points of comparison, you know. So if we took a bass from another brand and stood it by it, you know, or plugged them both in and tested them and said, how do you like the sound of that? How do you like the way that plays? How does it feel to you? Is it comfortable, you know? How is the tone? How do you like the finish? Is the finish beautiful to you, you know? And then compare, you know, and then say, well, this Warwick, you know, what do you think of how it sounds and how does it look? And you know, just compare, do comparisons. And maybe you can find a customer that comes to Warwick, and we can bring them to our family of what we do and what we take pride in the instruments, because there's all over the world there's so many people playing Warwick basses. It's a long-standing brand that has a really prestigious history and reputation for quality, and for an incredible list of endorsing artists that have played them over the years. You know, just to name a few, is Lee Sklar, Bootsy Collins, Verdine White, Steve Bailey, Robert Trujillo from Metallica. The list goes on and on and on and on and on.
YouTube, do it.
Yeah, of many different iconic and trend-setting bass players of all different styles. And that's another important thing to realize, is that it's not a one-trick pony. There's bass players from metal that play Warwick. There's bass players from jazz that play Warwick. There's bass players from country, rock, soul music, funk. You know, the instruments are capable of suiting the needs of any type of player. It's just a matter of finding the instrument that's the right fit for them. Do they like an instrument that looks shiny like this, that has a vintage look, that has a kind of a classic vintage look with a shiny kind of a thing? Or do they like an instrument that has a wood appearance, something that looks more natural, something that looks where you can see the grain and without the gloss finish on it, something that just looks more natural and like wood, like a tree, you know? Some people want that. That's what appeals to them. Some people like black, you know, just straight up black. And we have combinations like this one with the black oil over the wood, but you can still see the grain in the wood. So it gives it that black, that menacing kind of hard rock, you know, aggressive attitude, but yet you still have the wood. So it combines two different ideals or two different tastes into one instrument. And the variety is endless at Warwick. You know, you can have there's something for everybody. You know, here's a perfect example of what one of the things that the custom shop is capable of doing, which is the 30th anniversary commemorative 1968 Corvette. Hans-Peter Wilfer has an actual 1968 Corvette that's in this candy apple red, and it's painted identically to this bass. You know, it's the same color, and this thing has this chrome tone paint on it, which is an actual mirror finish. If you pick it up and look at it in the mirror, start brushing your teeth. It's a flawless mirror finish that was developed completely in-house. This whole process was developed completely in-house. And of course the fretboard inlay work that can be done in the custom shop. one of the primary mottos that Warwick has is, if you can dream it, we can build it. You know, and my bass is a really good example of it as well. If you look at how beautiful this instrument is, and the woods that are used in the custom shop features, like the LEDs and the very highly figured wood choices, rare, highly figured maple, maple fingerboard. You know, a lot of people don't know that you can get maple fingerboards on Warwick basses, because traditionally the Wengie has always been used in ebony. But you can order a custom shop bass with any kind of fingerboard material that you want. I chose AAA flame maple for my fingerboard on this bass. You can also order pickups from other manufacturers. I'm an EMG endorser and I love EMG, so on a couple of my custom shop basses I had them built with EMG pickups and EMG preamps, because I've been using them since 1984, and it's something that I'm so familiar with. They don't make any qualms about it. They say, if you want EMGs, you have your EMGs.
Option.
And the same thing goes for Bartolini, Seymour Duncan, or Nordstrand, or anything else. You can have whatever you want. Here's a great way to look at it. You know, the player doesn't have to, the player doesn't have to settle for the limitations of what the company can do, ever. It's the complete opposite. The player has the benefit of having no limit to getting exactly what they want. And that's the difference between Warwick and some other brands. Other brands have limits to what they're willing to do and what they're capable of doing. They have production model instruments that are available in said finish, you know, 5 different colors, 2 different fingerboard choices, maybe a different pickguard choice, or a couple of other minor flexible options, but that's it. You know, you get what you get. Whereas in the Warwick Custom Shop, there is no limit to you getting exactly what you want and how you want it. You know, this instrument is a 12-string bass. It's a one-of-a-kind 12-string bass built in the custom shop. If you go to the Warwick website, www.warwick.de, and go to the custom shop gallery, if you know, you could just sit there and the drool will start to, you know, come out of your mouth, because it's the basses that have been built for people blow your mind. I mean, this is so beautiful, you know. And now with the various different finishes that we're doing, like the stone bleaching over the burl, you know, stone bleaching over the burls, and sandblasting, and the rusty finishes, and there's just all kinds of constantly evolving ideas and evolution in the look of the instruments, offering different finishes. Another important part of the finishing is the lacquering. This one has the high polish, what we call the high polish finish, and this lacquering process is developed completely in-house. The actual process of lacquering is, first of all, the material that's used is water-based. It's a water-based UV lacquer. Okay. Traditionally, lacquer would be sprayed on, and then it would be hung to dry, and then sanded, and then sprayed on again, and then hung to dry for long extended periods of time, and then sprayed again, building a thick coat of lacquer over time. That's the old method. Okay. And that's the traditional method.
The way Gibson used to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what Warwick decided to do, based on several different factors, was to try to create a product that would achieve several different things and be safer for the sprayer. Because when you spray lacquer for any extended period of time, the stuff will eventually kill you. Well, what they determined was they found a way to create a product that's water-based. Now, the lacquer that's used now is water-based, and you could drink it and not die. You'd get sick, but you wouldn't die, okay? It's water, primarily.
I don't want to try it.
Yeah, you don't want to try it. But the most fascinating thing about it is that it sprays on, it goes on so thin. It's just a couple coats, and it goes on so thin. Then it goes into a chamber. It goes on this gets on a rack and goes into this chamber, and these doors open up, and the instrument is brought into the chamber, and the doors close behind it, and then it gets lifted up into this tower, and it goes up about this high, and then all of a sudden, wah, and it gets hit with this UV light, this intensely bright UV light for 30 seconds. And then it comes back down, comes out the doors, and you pick it up, and it's dry. Completely dry and ready to go be buffed and assembled. 30 seconds. Okay? Now, if you were to look through, and also it's completely scratch resistant. If you notice, my bass doesn't have a scratch on it. There's not a scratch on this bass. I'd be hard pressed if you can find one, show it to me. But this has been, I've had this for a while now, and I play it. You know what I mean? I don't covet it, you know what I mean? I don't, you know, I'm not extra careful with it. I just play the thing like an instrument, and there is not one scratch on it anywhere. And I've had it for a while. What that tells me is that this stuff is so hard and so scratch resistant, but yet it's so thin. You were to look at it through a traditional lacquered bass or guitar, through a gemologist, like a guy who looks at gems, you know, a magnifying glass. If you were to look at the lacquer, at the clear coat, on a traditional method, it would look milky and gray. It would look fuzzy and gray. And if you looked at it really closely, you would see that it's not actually transparent. It's actually milky. And if you look through this, it's almost as clear as a diamond. You know, 99.99999. You know, it's almost as clear as a diamond. It's almost 100% crystal clear. And what ends up happening as a result is the grain just explodes off of it. That's why you standing back there at 12, 16 feet away, you can see the flame. I mean, it really pops. And this high polish finishing, again, it's another one of the unique advances at Warwick that nobody else is doing, and it was done in-house by our people. Our people are workers, but they're also creating things. You know, they're inventing things, inventing new ways to improve quality at all times. You know, another process that Warwick has just brought into play in-house, a unique advance, is the invisible fret technology. This bass doesn't have it because it was built before the invisible fret technology started, which was just recently.
And there's no difference in the sound between the high gloss finish and the satin one?
Very marginal. I mean, it might be a little brighter, a little bit, but not enough to split hairs over. Yeah, because what it is it's on there so thin, it doesn't give it that kind of, like, you know, like an M&M candy. You know how it has a hard coating on the outside and then the soft chocolate on the inside? I think of the old, you know, method of where you put layer after layer after layer of lacquer and build it up so it's real thick like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of suffocating the wood underneath in there. It doesn't let it naturally.
Not letting it breathe.
It's not letting it breathe.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that thick, huge layer on it, so it's going to affect the tone. It's going to be more beneficial to have a thinner layer of clear coat. The hardest part of having a thin layer of clear coat is it durable enough? You know what I mean? Is it scratch resistant enough? But this stuff is so hard that you know, like I said, I've had it I've had it for a year and a half, and it doesn't have a scratch on it. And I'm telling you, I take it around and play it all the time.
No,
You know, like that's, to me, that right there says it.
Sure.
And then like this one, for example, doesn't have the clear coat on it. You know, some people prefer the satin type of finish.
Right.
You know, they like the colored oil and then just the sealer on there. They don't want it all shiny, you know. Some people have the personality that they want to be bold and they want to stand out and they want their instrument to be really striking, and other people are like, no, I'm a low-key guy. I want a low-key instrument, you know. I just want it to be cool, and I just want it to look, You know, so this one, you know, I think that this one has a cool aesthetic because it looks menacing and black. You know, it looks like something Darth Vader would play, but it has, it sounds like an angel, you know what I mean? It has this beautiful angelic sound. And, you know, I like this without the clear coat, without the high polish shower.
Can you say something about the neck construction when you have a neck through body or a set neck bolt on? Or
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good topic. All Warwick instruments have a laminated neck. When you laminate several pieces of wood together, it makes it 10 times stronger than a single piece of wood. Okay? So this bass, I could probably swing it a couple, 3 times before it would break, you know, as hard as I can. It would be really hard to break the headstock off of this bass or to break this neck. And it's very unlikely that this neck will ever warp or really move that much because the way that the lamination is done, it adheres and makes it very stable. But all Warwick instruments, including the imports, have a laminated neck. This is a rock-based Fortress, and it has a laminated neck. Now, at the point of imports, when we come to imports, there's a really good quality argument, a really, really good quality argument that exists in the fact that all of our basses have laminated necks, even in the imports. And of course, like I mentioned before, all of them have the hardware and the adjustability that other instruments in the same price range don't have. And when it comes to the necks, the bolt-on necks, it all comes down to the neck pocket. You know, I was talking when I first started talking today. I was talking about the vibration of the instrument and making the whole thing resonate and ring. Well, with any bolt-on instrument, this area right here is the most important thing, where the neck meets the body, because this brings the two together and joins them and makes a union there. And you'll find a lot of variation and inconsistency in neck pockets from manufacturer to manufacturer. In Warwick, the tolerances of the neck pocket are so incredibly tight that you can remove the screws, and then pick up the bass by the neck, and the body won't fall from the neck. You have to, and you know, pop it out. It's pressed in there, so it's an incredibly tight neck pocket, and this is even on the import basis, you know, and that's another huge point of quality comparison to an instrument at a similar price point. You know, if I was to line this up against 5 other manufacturers that sell a bass for $949, I could point out that it has a 3-dimensional bridge system. I could point out that it has the adjustable nut system. I could point out that it has the quick access truss rod cover and electronics compartment cover. I would point out that it has a laminated neck, an incredibly tight neck pocket, and that it has a solid ash body and maple neck and rosewood fingerboard. You know, when it comes to the import basses, in this price range and down, the bodywood quality is a huge point of argument, because this is a solid ash body, and you can feel it. You know, we use actual quality tone woods on the imports, where the idea of a quality tone wood being used on an import is far from reality with a lot of the inexpensive instruments. Oftentimes it has a black finish like this, but underneath it is something that, you know, doesn't even resemble solid tone wood. It's plywood or some type of, you know, knotted out, crummy, low quality wood. That's just how it's done, you know. But Warwick doesn't do it like that. We use all quality tone woods on all of them. And like I said, you go to the question of the necks. Every neck is laminated. And this is a huge point of quality and longevity and stability, is having a laminated neck. Obviously he plays metal, but that doesn't mean that this bass is only good for metal. I mean, I could put... That's the farthest thing from Metallica you're gonna find, but it still sounds, you know, the bass sounds versatile to me. I can get a lot of different tones out of it.